Okay, so hello everyone. So just tell me how the sound seems to be. Just move myself a little bit here. Um, so yeah, just to clarify, yeah, that date that's in the lower left there, November 30th is when the game was actually played. And unfortunately, oh, very good. The sound seems to be working. Um, so yeah, great. And I didn't have time to do a live commentary of the game as it was happening, um, so I'm doing it now. So that's the story here. This was the ninth game of the Nongshim Cup, and this was a tournament that's a team tournament between Japan, China, and Korea, the three countries, five players with each team, and um, if someone loses, he's eliminated, and the winner goes on to the next round in which he plays a different country. So, for instance, if China and Korea play a game, the winner goes on to play Japan in the next round. And so this is the first time that, well, I'm not sure about that. It's an unusual time in which Japan has won four straight games in this tournament. So it's kind of a special thing for people in Japan. And Shin Minjun is one of the greatest players of this time, I believe. So it's really exciting to see Iyama playing against him. So, to get to the game then. Let's see. Oh yeah, I should talk about the tiger background. The tiger is um, it's the sign of next year, so that's why it's going. I should move over a little bit. Yeah, so that's why the tiger is actually standing on top of a go board, and so you can see the go board now. And that's the picture, the painting that was used for. It's an image of the painting anyway. It's an image of the painting that was used for my calendar. So I'm putting out a calendar to celebrate 10,000 subscribers to my YouTube channel. And so this is the first picture in it. And actually it has 12 pictures that have to do with the season of year and also have to do with Go in some fashion. So there's a link at the top, at least in the YouTube channel. I pinned it to the top. You can probably see it you can probably still see it if you scroll up to the top of the chats. You can see it in Twitch also. So that's the first month. Maybe later I'll change I could actually change to other months, but I'll leave it at the tiger for now. Let's get back to the game. So yeah, so anyone who's interested, go ahead and take a look at the vendor's link later. So Iyama was, in general, he plays a lot of 3-4 points, but he was playing almost exclusively 3-4 points. He didn't play any star points that I know of in this tournament. I don't remember him playing any star points. He generally played 2-3-4 points, or a 3-4 point and a 3-3 point. And in the previous three games, he came in, let's see, he came up in round 6. And for a star player, I would call Iyama the star player of Japan. For a star player, being the third player coming up, he came after Kyokagen and Shibano Toramaru had been eliminated. So the tournament was moving ahead with not so many consecutive wins, so it was fairly even at that point. And Iyama came up as the third player, and so it was early. He showed up early, and he did very well. He was playing with white most of the time, and I did live commentaries for some of his games. If you haven't seen that and you want to, you can probably look it up and find it at my YouTube channel. Okay, so he's playing 3-4 points again. And I talked about this in a different broadcast also, but my take on this is that part of it is that he likes the 3-4 points, obviously. And another part of it, I believe, is that he's playing openings that people will not have researched as deeply when they study with computer programs, because people can use computer programs to, at a lower level, even professionals at a lower level, where can memorize openings and do very well with that. At the level of players in this tournament, they're all leading players in their countries. At the level of players in this tournament, I believe that they develop a deeper understanding and go deeper and find moves that, although they are reinforced by computer research, I think they also find moves that will be sort of unique to the player himself, so that they can, you might say, get outside of the opponent's preparation. So I think that's part of what Iyama is doing here. Most players will study mostly start point openings just because the AIs we have now like them a lot. So that's one reason why people tend to study more deeply the start point openings, and they're more common. And so playing a 3-4 point opening does sort of take it away from that group of openings that are very deeply analyzed by a lot of professionals. That said, it's not as if he's really taking Shin Minjun by surprise here. They're both playing almost, you might say, computer perfect is a word. This extension, it's always difficult to say where exactly White should play the extension. White does have to pay attention to this wall on the left, because this is a wall that does not have eyes. So this wall here is something that White should remember. It's relatively weak, and that would be a reason for playing a bit further to the left. Something like this would also be an option, but it would give Black room to invade on the right in that case. So it would be just a different game. This is probably, if we just look at the upper right corner, usually White plays here, or sometimes even one line to the right. But in this case, White would play here to get a good balance on the right side. And Black plays here. So here Black is gathering strength. This is a good move to start to develop the left side of the board. And also, it's preparing to invade the upper side. It's a direct threat. And it's not as if White didn't notice that. This is something that they do. Just like if White is going to answer here, it means Black's going to get another move towards the right side of the board. And this would be fairly close also. But it would be a lot of moves for White to use on the upper side. So White plays away. White's trying to find an active way of reinforcing the upper side. So for instance, if Black is worried about this Black group and, for instance, does stuff like this, you can see White's upper side is going to gradually get stronger, and it's maybe eventually going to turn into territory. So stuff like this, for instance, would be an example of how this could be working ideally for White, with the invasion, the potential invasion to the upper side going away. So obviously Black's not going to let that happen. By putting pressure on Black in the upper right corner, it means that at any point, if White plays a stone somewhere around here, for instance, it really depends on how the fight develops. But if White plays here, or otherwise, if White plays underneath here, Daniel Relia gave me a present. Thank you very much. If White does one of these things, it can put pressure on the Black group in the corner. So White's making a threat there, trying to control the right side at the same time as reducing the danger of Black's invasion on the upper side. So Black invades anyway. Yes, okay, people were talking about the Komi. It's a Chinese tournament. No. Let's see. I believe this is actually 6.5. Let's see if I can find the original game record. It's just It's the Nongshim tournament. Yes, and I believe it's 6.5 points. So that's because it's a Korean tournament, I believe. So let's see. Any other questions? Yeah, and just to make sure no one's confused, it is not, the game itself is not live right now. So I'm doing a review of the game, and it was played at the end of last month, and they will be playing some more rounds later. So this is round number 9. They started with 4 rounds earlier last year, this year that is, and then in November they played 5 more rounds to get to round number 9, and they'll be playing some more rounds next year. This tournament goes on to 14 rounds because we have 5 players from 3 countries, China, Korea, and Japan, and everyone except for the final winner gets eliminated. So a maximum of 14 rounds. If one country wins the tournament with some players left over, which is something that can happen, then it will be less than 14 rounds. But that's going to happen next year anyway. So White's plan, Sawyer West is saying, let Black live small with the J-17 invasion, but build strength to attack the R-16 group for profit. Yeah, Sawyer West just about said it. That should be White's strategy here. One problem that White has is that if this develops into a kind of a running fight, for instance, something like this, you might notice that I'm not sure about Black too. It's not as if I researched that, so don't take it as gospel. But basically, if Black moves out here, that White group in the upper left is going to be relatively isolated, and it's going to be hard to say whether this group is stronger than this group. And that's partly because Black added a stone here to reinforce his left side. It took a lot of potential away from White on the left side. This is actually Shin Minjun, so it's the other Shin. In Korea, they have 2 famous players called Shin, and this is Shin Minjun, who is not quite as successful as Shin Jin-so, who is the final player in the Korean team. So they still have Shin Jin-so. At present, Korea has Shin Jin-so, and China has Mi Yu-ting and KJ, of course. Yeah, so KJ is probably going to be the final player if it goes in the usual order. And Japan still has Ichiriki. Oh, I should have it written down somewhere. Japan still has, it'll come to me later. Japan still has 2 players waiting to play. Okay, back to the game. So White doesn't really want to get into a running fight here where this wall on the left could potentially become a liability. So that's why White is going to enclose, just as Sawyer West was saying. And yeah, it might look like AlphaGo up to this point. This is actually, I think this is at this point, actually directly after the game, what Iyama said. He was interviewed after he finished playing the game, immediately after the game. He was interviewed, and he said that he had experience with this opening before, and he was talking up to about this point in the game. And what he means when he said that is that he means that he played it against a computer, basically. He didn't play it in his tournament games. He's played this against a computer. He's played it probably against Katago, because that's the program that the strongest program that we have easy access to in that we can install it into our own computers. Or maybe people play games against computers on servers also. So like if you go to a Chinese server, sometimes you can play against Fine Art, which is one of the famous Chinese Go programs. They have a few strong ones. Ikichin is asking an interesting question. Iyama played 4 days in a row in this tournament. And Ikichin is asking, is it a detriment because of possible fatigue? or is it beneficial because it keeps you sharp? And that's sort of both. But I think I actually did see fatigue in Iyama after 4 games. And he was okay. A number of people are giving us the name of the other Japanese players, Yu Zhenkui, which is not how I would say it because I know his name in the Japanese pronunciation. But yes, that looks right. Thank you very much. Yeah, and it wasn't Konori. That's right. Um, so what was I saying? I lost my track. Okay. Um, okay. So he has played this on Fox. Very interesting. Versus Shin Minjun. Yes. So it's an opening that both players are probably fairly familiar with up to this point. And Iyama actually did say that it was about here where he did not have this experience and he actually did not know where the computer was going to play. Actually, I think I saw an interesting variation where black was, Katago seemed to want to play one closer to the wall, which looks really weird. But it's interesting because later on in the game, I think one of the variations went something like this. Black actually does have a good follow-up with this move. It's more forceful. For instance, if white plays like this, black can play here and start a fight like this, and it's a bit more troublesome for white. So it's more forceful. The follow-up there is more forceful than in this case, where black's next move would be here. It's a kind of a bad shape. It's a bad shape because black has no eyes, black has no flexibility there, and it's liable to get surrounded in some cases. So like if white starts doing stuff like this, it can get to be a bit clumsy for black, the whole variation. And it's not really stopped white's connection either. So like if, just ignoring how it might turn out, but in a pinch, white can always connect up on the, this is already bad for black, so I'm having trouble showing you what I was going to say, but in a pinch, white can always connect up on the second line. And white's not going to do that because black's in trouble, though. So this is where he said he was sort of outside of his preparation. And it looks like maybe this was not the optimal move. And you can see also Shin Jinso is outside of his preparation, I believe, with this move. Where it would have been okay for white just to play here. And the latter does favor white, or white can continue on the outside. Black would probably just sacrifice those stones, but this would be a cleaner way of capturing those black stones on the upper side. So white played here and cut. This is where temporarily the game starts to look okay for black. It's a point in the game where it's looking okay. Thank you, Eric Jones. Yes. There is a section. Eric Jones says he's watched my channel, but he doesn't really understand what I'm talking about sometimes. So that's okay. If you're watching, I'm happy. But there is a section for novice players. So there's a beginner section, and in the future I will be adding videos to that. And it's supposed to take you from beginner to double-digit Q, or maybe close to single-digit Q eventually. So after I add some more videos, that is. So look forward to that, please. So going back to the game. So here, yeah. So black has this net that black is threatening here. And white surviving this net sort of depends on having the cut here to be able to use. So there's a kind of a weakness there that white has to remember. And so in the following few moves, you're seeing that happening. So for instance, if white had just played some move in the center, like this would be a kind of a shape, then black would be getting the net. So white has to keep that option away from black. White has to stop black from doing that. And so that's what white is doing with this move. Playing at the top of 2 stones is supposed to be, the proverb says it's a key point, it's a vital point. And and it's so it puts these 2 black stones in Damizumari in general, we've always known that this is a good point, and it's a good point still, even though we have computers to tell us various things. They don't disagree with that. It's a good point. And it does stop black from getting the geta. So if black plays here, white can escape the net this way. Capturing here is going to be an Atari, so it's just not working for black. This is actually the ladder. So what black cuts. This is also the head of two stones. So it's again, playing a hane at the head of two stones is always a key point. In this case, it's really working very directly to put these two stones in damezumari and shortage of liberties, that is. And so that's a very effective move. And white eventually plays here. This is threatening to break through with this move. So for instance, yeah, it's even more effective than you might think. So if black plays on the outside with something like this, then white can break through here. And it might look momentarily that black has stemmed it, but it's going to be a squeeze from this side. And white captures the important stones. Go Baduk is waiting for the video series from mid-dawn to pro. Yeah, that's going to be a tough one to make. Okay. So black answered. So that's pretty straightforward. And white plays here. This captures the black group on the upper side. So up to this point, it's actually okay for black. And it's... I think the computer was giving black a slight advantage at the 6.5 point komi. And it's not a very big amount if you look at the territory score. So I often talk about, the territory score versus the point score that most computer programs give. Katago gives you both. So that's a computer program that gives you both how many points it thinks black will win in territory, at the same time as giving you a kind of a winning percentage, a score that relates to how likely it is that black is going to win. And that's a completely different thing. So in some cases, a computer program can give you something like 90% or more than that when you're only winning by half a point. So yeah. In this case, it was, for this stage of the game, like 70% is a pretty big difference. And it was 60-something, if I recall correctly. And it was a relatively small difference in points. So it's a close enough game that professional players will not feel very comfortable. And what I was interested in was what Iyama said after the game. He said that he probably should have played something like this, is what he said. So something like this. White has to answer there because it's not actually a ladder, but black can capture with this move. This is a Tetsuji to capture the two white stones. And if white plays here, black can play here. And when I look at it now, if white is willing to get really horrible shape, white maybe can escape, but it's probably a bad idea to pursue this variation very much anyway, because it's just horrible for white. And so it's even if white escapes there, it's not really going to be an option. So white probably has to answer here. This would be the way to reduce black's potential forcing moves. So although it's a kind of an awkward shape, if you compare it to moves like this, which would be another option, this way black would still have some more forcing moves here in the center, and white would still have a squeezable shape, which would make it sort of troublesome for white later. So it's probably reasonable to say that white's going to play here and just take away any of black's forcing moves. Obviously, this is not going to be forcing anymore. And black plays something like this. And this was a diagram. A diagram something like this is what Iyama was talking about after the game when he was interviewed. And he said he thought that he probably should have played here. But the reason he didn't, because he thought of it, but he didn't play it. The reason he didn't play this was because he couldn't really tell if this area was a black territory or not. We have a Japanese guest, Ta Sato-san. Welcome. Konnichiwa. So yeah, so this is a position where maybe this whole area in the lower left is going to be a black territory. If it is, that's good for black. It's obviously good for black. But it's almost impossible for a human player to read out variations of what happens here. This might look unreasonable, but if white does it, it's actually going to be pretty complicated. Or if white does something like this, maybe white's going to get something in the corner. In actual play, these fights are actually pretty scary, and so it's sort of it's something that black worried about, and even a player like Iyama, he actually said that he couldn't figure it out, so he avoided this variation, although he thought it was probably theoretically the best way to play. He avoided it because he wasn't sure if this whole area was a territory, and so it would be in a fight that started here. Both players would probably be sort of fighting in an area of semi-darkness where they could not read out the whole variation, and so it would kind of be a gamble. He was afraid of that. Okay, let's see. The chat seems to be pretty lively here. Leonardo de Wagner is asking when there's such a sequence when you have two mirroring hanes. So we're talking about this move that white played to put these two stones in trouble, and this move that black played to put these two stones in a shortage of liberties. Basically what the players were doing here, the way white handled it was sort of by necessity. It was a bit clumsy, because black still has some forcing moves here, just as I was showing you. So black still has some potential to put some pressure on these two stones, which makes it a bit painful for white, but white had to capture basically white's strategy, starting with the whole sequence here. So if we go back, let's see, go back to this move. The moment white plays here, white's plan is to capture that upper side. So in order for this to work, white has to finish that. And so up to this point, although it was sort of clumsy looking, it does capture the upper side, and so it was sort of working for white. So that's how white was using that. Black's move, so let's just take the mark off white and take a look at black's move. Black's move, therefore, is the more effective head of two stones, in that it's continuing to put pressure on those two white stones and develop the lower left area. And this variation I was just talking about, I can use it to demonstrate how you handle it from white's viewpoint, is that you just try to get rid of your opponent's forcing moves. So that's my answer to Leonardo. Yes, white is getting squeezed. It is actually a pretty big territory that white just built there on the upper side, so it's close enough to be undecided, the game. I would rather play with black, but it's still hard to say who's winning. And Conscious Breaks is asking, is it just Iyama's style to avoid such uncertainty with this variation where black surrounds the lower left? Not exactly. He does like to get into very complicated fights. I would guess that it was just his feeling in this particular game, and the fact that the game was compared to a lot of the games that Iyama plays, this game was relatively short in the time. So so the time control was relatively short, especially if we compare it to those Japanese title matches that Iyama was playing. So that would be one reason for him to try to avoid uncertainty in this case. And he's playing with one of the sharpest players in the world. We have to admit that. Okay, Go Baduk has translated the message from Korea. Thank you very much. Nice to meet you too. Okay, I think I'm caught up. That was fun. Kim Minjun. Okay. I'll remember that. So I'll see if I see that again, maybe I'll remember. I hope to remember. Okay, we're talking about the G6 move now. Is there a tighter move that would be more playable and make the reading easier? And yes and no. Like if black plays here, this is going to be tighter towards the corner. it's going to give white some options to reduce a little bit from the center. So like, for instance, if something like this, for instance, something like this, where white is going to get some forcing moves from the center. The fun variation, obviously, for the stronger players, this is probably just a bit too obvious, but this would capture the black stones. So when white plays here, black has to back off. You can see white is sort of caving in the black moyo and is going to get something maybe in the center, so some potential there at least. So there's always a price for playing these tighter moves. And of course, if you say, oh, I don't want to do that and start doing stuff like this, then it's going to get really, really complicated and not necessarily the safer variation. Okay, back to the game. So black played here. So there's another thing about this is that it's pretty clear to me. My belief is that Iyama is seeing a lot of bad aji on the upper side, and this is going to link up to what happens next, because he's seeing some bad aji there. He wants to make use of it. Locally, this is a really sharp move that he's just played. The problem is that maybe it was a bit premature, but in this variation where white plays here and here, black is looking at all sorts of weird stuff that could happen inside what looks like a white territory. So if white connects here, which is probably a bad idea, black's probably going to start by playing this. You can see black is sort of building this area, which was, it's still not a black territory, but it's getting better and better, closer and closer to a territory. And at the same time, let's just have a random white move. Somewhere around here is a big move. And when black does stuff like this, there's going to be a whole bunch of bad aji. It's going to be very troublesome. And I'm not going to go into details because it's going to be confusing. And I'm not just talking about the people watching. It's going to be confusing for me too, because at this point, it's not clear exactly how black is supposed to use this. But there is going to be some variations. There are going to be variations later in the game where it's a bit clear what I want to do with black, and I'll show you something. So at this point, I'll just say that there's a huge amount of bad aji there, and it's very worrisome for white. At the very least, black's going to take a lot of squeezing to do. YSF Memories, welcome. This is, my commentary here is live, so you can ask questions, but it's, yes. Thank you, Don Carnes. It's a review of a previous game, which I did not get to do a live commentary for, so I'm doing it now. So white plays here after all, and so what Shin Minjun is doing here is he's saying, in some cases, I'm just going to sacrifice these stones. By offering to sacrifice these stones, it actually takes away the potential for black to be getting forcing moves along this line. And also here, it makes it more difficult for black to make use of those forcing moves when white is just sort of freely giving them away. Actually, if black goes after those stones with a move like this, this would be the easiest way to capture them. It's okay for white because white's just going to squeeze. So white's offering those stones to black because saving them in that other variation that I was showing you where white plays here, it leaves so much bad aji. There's going to be ways for black to make use of that from the center and from the upper side. And it's just too much of a headache. It's not worth it. At the best case scenario is that black is going to get some forcing moves here, and it's going to make it easier for black to. So in any case, it's going to be bad for white. So it was a good judgment for white just to leave it and say you can go ahead and capture those stones. And of course, the lower left is a big area. And black plays here, making use of the damezmari here again. So this is kind of a standard tactic for professional. Yeah, I didn't want to do that. Yeah, so white plays here. And he played here, cutting immediately. And this is a point where this seemed to be a bad move. Like this was, it was sort of hard for me to tell. But one of the variations that Katago showed me was so much more exciting that I tend to, I'm just going to say that this is better. The whole point is that when black played here and played here, he's pretty much used up all of his forcing moves. Like, black does have a forcing move here, which is just not so exciting. Or if black runs out here, there's not really very much future in this. It's going to take a long time for black to fill enough. Black does have a kind of a little dream here of filling up some liberties of these stones, but it's going to take some time. It's not going to work ideally. And meanwhile, white's getting a lot of stones in a line in the center, so that's going to be a fairly strong group. And so maybe not an immediate threat here. So the idea behind this move in the variation, where black plays here, not making a direct threat to the center. Black is threatening to play a move somewhere around here and surround the left side. So white's probably going to jump into the left side. And with Aji towards the corner, some space towards the side, I'm willing to believe that this stone is going to be okay. And let's just not get into the details because it's going to be complicated. But black is actually going to start with the center here. And the big difference is that black gets to extend at 5. This is actually going to be a kind of a direct threat against white in the center. So, for instance, first of all, it's a direct threat against these 4 stones. So these 4 stones are about to be caught in a net. White has to run out. And it's really neat for black to play the double hane now. Although black has a forcing move here, it's better for black to wait. Black can wait until white plays an Atari here, and then black can use it. And then you see that Atari at 10 exchanging for 13. The exchange of these two stones is really bad for white. Or otherwise, if white cuts on the other side. In this case, black never had to play this move, which is probably a bad exchange. It fills one of black's liberties. So it's better for black to have the open liberty there. So this is working for black. If white just answers, black's going to play all the forcing moves and finally connect here. Black still has some threat towards the center. It's putting a lot of pressure on white on the lower left. This is just a great variation for black. And also, let's just have a random move for white. This is actually a move that could be played. When black plays here, that's a direct threat against white in the center. I mean, not in the center, on the upper side. So black can play here and throw in here and play an Atari and capture these cutting stones. So that's one of the things I was talking about, actually, when I was talking about Aji there. Some potential inside the white territory. This is one of the examples of how it can work. So black needed some extra stones in this area and the move at 17, which was a very useful move on the outside also, connecting up black stones and building an area here. So these were all very useful moves. And they were setting up this Damezmari where black can capture the cutting stones. This would be a disaster for white. So if we go back and say white's going to answer that, maybe it would be this move. Oh, sorry. This move. So black still has this forcing move. He doesn't have to play it necessarily, but is going to be able to play moves like this or moves like this. Very easy entrance into white's area on the right side of the board. And, you know, that white group in the center still only has 4 liberties. So there's still a lot of potential for black, in some cases, to squeeze it. Because this group I'm talking about, it only has 4 liberties. The black group has 4 liberties too. So there's going to be some potential for black to squeeze in the center. So this would be really good for black. So playing the diagonal move here, it's not a move that is easy to think of in a game situation. Even a top pro, as we see, Iyama used the forcing moves immediately. This is probably a more normal way of doing it. There is still it's not a big chance, but there is some potential that at some point he can sort of manufacture this potential. So it's a more standard way of playing it. It's Sente, he gets to play towards the left side now. Makes sense. But I was very impressed by this variation that I saw in one of the variations with Katawa. So I'm going with this one. Okay, see what I've left behind in the chat. Thanks for everyone for following up when people don't know if this is live or not. I understand it's a bit confusing maybe. Great. L17. Yeah, L17. It's okay. So at any point, if black plays L17, white will probably connect. I'm not sure when Leonardo was thinking of playing this move, but um, this actually makes it slightly more difficult for black to capture those white stones. So white would probably answer once, um, and would still have the option of throwing these stones away. So the whole point of white playing away, if we go back to that position, where black has done this kind of squeeze maneuver here, at this point, already white is thinking of sacrificing the 3 stones. So it's not a big issue for white. Okay, yeah. Good idea, Derek Neal. Thank you. Okay, so black surrounds the right side. So this is where Shin Minjun starts to show, he starts to get brilliant. Well, he's brilliant anyway, but yeah, you know what I mean. It's going to be pretty amazing from here on. This was mundane enough. It was normal. He plays here. And at this point, no one knows what he's planning to do. Like, the sequence that you sort of expect to happen is not quite working for white. So it's really amazing how he made it work. And so he plays here. So this is, it looks like it's one of those playing away moves, maybe a time gaining Tetsuji kind of thing. It's not. This is a kind of a vital move in the whole sequence here. And it's a very subtle threat against black in the corner. And it's asking, how is black going to answer here? So black has a number of ways of answering, and most of them are just losing very subtly points. So black plays locally this is the optimal move. But it turns out this is what white was waiting for. So first of all, I want to discuss the idea that black could have played this at any point. This would have been a forcing move. And let's change the calendar to, let's change the calendar. So what I've been showing here was a tiger, which is the sign of the year 2022. And it's standing on a go board. So I have to sort of hide to show you the go board. This is the painting that was an image of the painting that was used for my calendar in January. And so this is the picture that goes with January, and it's because it's the sign of the year. One of my favorite pictures actually in this calendar. Let's see if I can find the calendar. Let's see. One of my favorite pictures in the calendar was the December picture. So that's two cranes playing goats. There's an old story about a crane and I forget what the other bird was. It's a crow or something. A blackbird playing go. So the old story has it black and white, but for the purposes of this painting, it was 2 cranes playing go. So that's the December picture. I really like the paintings. Mind you, I didn't do them myself. Right. So to get back to the game, he didn't want to play this. He could have played this anytime and it would have been exchanged for this. This changes some of the potential of things that could happen towards the upper side. So that's why he didn't want to play it. So it would be losing some maji towards the upper side. And usually you don't see any reason to need to play this move. It's not really gaining very much territory. Maybe 1 point or something, but the loss of aji, the loss of moves like this, for instance, which happened later in the game, it didn't really work, but there's a lot of potential attached to it, and it has to do with some variations. Black gets to save this stone on the left, on the right, that is. So there's stuff there that could happen. He doesn't really want to play this exchange. So that was part of what gave Shin Minjun the opportunity to play this at this point. Black plays an Atari, white connects, and black played here. So black had various ways to do that. But if black had played, for instance, the bamboo joint, white would have immediately cut here. And black would have a choice of connecting here or taking. If black takes, then obviously this is a huge forcing move for white. It's bad. It's losing. Yes. Yes, my daughter read it. Thank you, Sandy. My daughter made the paintings. And the connection. The connection, in this case, white's going to have some potential to be forcing from this side. So it's going to be very similar to what happened in the game. In the game, black played here, the standard connection. Black's not giving any extra points to white. So locally, this is the only way, basically. It's correct. So white plays here, and black plays an Atari here. So, obviously, anyone can see that black wants to play... Sorry, I didn't need to do that. Black wants to play here to capture the white stone, right? It's obvious. So why does he play this Atari first? There's a good reason for him to play the Atari first, and it was sort of the expected move. So to explain why he doesn't just play here, white's going to play here, and probably is going to play here. So when white plays here, the fact that black did not get... Black really wants to have this exchange. It would make a big difference, just giving black a better shape towards the center. In this case, black would probably just connect. Connecting would be good enough. Even this would be good enough. White's going to have trouble connecting up there. And so it's not very much of a success for white. It's just the extra stone here is really getting in the way here, this exchange. So that's what black is doing. Okay, yeah, that was not... Right, yeah, so something like this might happen, in which case, in this case, white is easily connecting up, putting pressure on the black group on the lower side, and has broken into the black territory. So black might continue with this. Oh, I didn't have any extra moves in. I'll just add one then. Black will probably continue with some kind of an extension to the side, but white's broken into the black territory. In some cases, white's still going to be able to make use of this stone. So there's some potential there left behind. So this would be a success for white. So it's very important, if we, from the black's original plan, it was very important for black to play this exchange. And if white connects here, that's going to change everything that happens towards the corner. So if, for instance, if white cuts here and pushes down, there's no way to capture these black stones. And that's something that's very, very important. So if white plays here, black goes down. White can't chase from either side. So if white chases from this side, it's just not working. If white chases from the other side, black wins the semi-priority. So this would be complete disaster for white. And it becomes very difficult for white to enter the black territory. Like conceivably, white could play here and come here. This would reduce the black territory to a certain extent, but it would not be a very convincing way for white to reduce the black territory. Like black would still have a lot of ways to even capturing the one stone, but black would probably just simply play here. And it's not such a satisfactory way for white to be entering the black territory. White's not getting any, not really getting into the corner. It's not very good. And so black plays here. Black would like white to connect and black to play here. So here white plays here. So this is the move that maybe it even came as a surprise to Iyama. And the point is that this is the only, it was the only time during the game where white could play this peep as a forcing move. Thank you everyone for complimenting the art. And like, I'm sure Christopher Uger has also meant that as a compliment. So thank you. And right, yeah. Sawyer West is eating Mentos and playing Go. That's a bad idea. I don't think, unless you're playing with, well, whichever color you're playing with, that's a bad idea. It's dangerous. And my daughter, yeah, well, if you ask her, I'd say she'd say she's a professional painter, I believe. Yes. Thank you for the compliments. Thank you to all of you. And YS Memories finally there, yeah. White D13, white C11, we might say, or D13 and C11, yes. That's Oden Master who's saying it was a blind spot. Um, it didn't really, and Oden Master is saying that even fine art wasn't showing it in the reference diagram. And then, so this is something that like it's professionals sort of really like this kind of finding this kind of move. It's something that professionals tend to be good at. And usually we would know, but it came as a surprise for some reason in this game to most of us anyway. And so just to show you the other variation where white has connected here first, this is an example of why it would not be forcing. In this case, black can answer on this side. And white doesn't have anything here. So if black can find a way to answer that captures this one stone, so 6 here would be a double purpose move that captures the marked stone, and it also deals with black's weakness on the other side. So nothing would amount of this. Even though white has a little squeeze there, it's not going to have any real meaning. So this would just be a complete disaster for white. It wouldn't work. This is the one time in the game where white can make use of this exchange here. And you can see he had this planned from that point at least, probably earlier. But the fact that white can make use of this exchange here, and this is the one time in the game, one point in the game, where black has no choice but to connect. So if black played something like this towards the center, the difference is that this move does not completely capture the white stone. It's really pretty amazing the timing, how he set that up from several moves before. So just to go back a bit, just to re-emphasize that. If white had done this immediately, then black would be able to capture the one stone. Again, it's just not working. Nothing. So it's just the one move chance at this point. This is the only time of the game where this is going to work. And so yeah, let's just do the variation where black tries to capture the white stone from this side. It's not captured. So white's going to cut here, going to play here. There's a snap back there. If black plays here, white can do this. That's a disaster. Obviously, you're not going to see a player like Iyama fall into that. So this is already bad. White still has the snap back there. It's still this shape. So black can handle that with this. Meanwhile, there's still a bit of weakness here. White can still reduce the black territory a little bit there. Or white can just play something like this. And the result is that these black stones have been cut off. So it's really bad for black. It's really bad. So this would be a complete disaster. And it's better for black to play as he did in the game. But this is already the move, this exchange. So you might be wondering what white's doing with this exchange. It's very, very useful. It's very, very useful. And that happens when black plays here. So we get back to this variation where I was talking about how important it was for black to have this exchange. It turns out when white gets this exchange in, there's this variation where white can now push all the way down here. So that's the big difference, because this stone is going to make a world of difference. You realize that in this position, white would not be able to play this afterwards. It's only the one time that white got that chance to play this move. And if black extends here, this is going to capture the black stones, because white has a hanging connection, the tiger's mouth shape here, and can capture the black stones. So this exchange here, it wasn't just a good feeling move. It made a real difference to the race to capture. So in this race to capture, these white stones have 4 liberties. These white stones have 4 liberties. So these stones. So if we add an extra move there, it's relatively easy to count. White has 4 liberties on both sides. Black has only 3 liberties. So that's a collapse. And if black pulls back, now it's a much better way for white to reduce the black territory. So something like this might happen. Actually, arguably, this would be arguably, this would be better than the actual game, but it's kind of it's obviously bad for black compared to what black should have been doing. That black territory on the left is really being reduced very drastically. When white's got into the corner area, it's not bad. I mean, it's not good for black. It's very bad. So whether or not white can play the move at c6, white 6 in this diagram, that's very important. And it makes a huge difference in the amount of territory black's going to get. Wow. So yeah. So this was spectacular. It was a brilliant sequence by Shin Minjun. And just the timing of this peep here. And everyone was impressed. And you can see, like, I get the feeling that Iyama just thinks he's lost most of his chances to win when he plays this. He's demonstrating why he didn't play the forcing move here. He was looking at the aji here, and since white's done such a good job on the left side and put him in a very kind of embarrassing situation here, he at least wanted to show what he was trying to do. So it's I sort of get the feeling that it doesn't even have to do with trying to make something here. He's just trying to show the viewers what his idea was. And it's a point where he's thinking maybe he's lost the game already. So you can see how this extra aji is going to make it relatively easy for black to kill those white stones. These white stones here. So it's relatively easy for black to kill those. Just one more move. And in some cases, black can, for instance, black also has a forcing move here, which would be threatening to push through here, and white can't cut. So that's another potential forcing move that black has there. So there's still some aji and there's some potential profit there locally, which is why black was not playing the forcing move at this point. If black had played the forcing move at this point, then none of this bad stuff on the left side would have happened. So he was sort of demonstrating what he was trying to do. He probably still should have gone into that other variation. So just to show it again, it's probably still better for black to play here. But I don't get the feeling that this is going to be good enough to win the game for black, because it is very painful for white to be breaking through like this. So white could have just connected. White could have just connected. This would have been good enough. He's getting even more fancy. He's playing a forcing move here. Just making sure that he has a potential life in the corner, just so he's securing an even safer win. So at this point, the game is definitely in Shin Minjun's favor. I'd say any professional would be feeling very comfortable about the game now. I would be feeling comfortable even if I was playing against a tough player like Iyama. But we're going to see how that can be a mistake sometimes. So black does have a lot of territory on the left side of the board, but white's area on the right is just so big that white doesn't really even have to try. White doesn't even have to try very hard to have end up with enough territory to win the game. So that's how it's going to turn out. We have to remember that while black has this area on the left, this is black's big territory, white does have a potential life in the corner. White does have a potential life in this corner too. So there's still going to be stuff happening in these two corners, in the lower left corner and the upper right corner. For the time being, black has to invade the white moyo. He's not about to give up. He wouldn't be giving up if it was an individual tournament. And when it's a team tournament, it's even harder to give up. So he's still fighting to be in the game. And this is working just okay for white. White is attacking the black group. No ideas of killing this group at this point. Not necessarily. But white can just sort of surround the center, this area. Let's just get rid of some of that. White can just surround this area, keep the corner territory, and then we'll have the leisure to do something in one of these two corners. So sometimes this move works, sometimes it's just a Atari on the second line. So white has very good prospects at this point. He's should be feeling very happy about the game. He should be. So here, I'm going to say it all started with this move. So this move, it works. Black cannot capture this stone. Black cannot capture this stone, but it's going to give black an opportunity to sort of connect up stones in a line like this and surround white's group on the left. And at this point, like a player like Shin Minjun realizes that, and he knows that he can handle it. So, except for the fact that there was an oversight, about 10 moves in the future, I guess, of this game. But he'd already, I'm pretty sure he'd already seen that far ahead, and he had this move that he thought worked, and in a very strange, unusual sequence, it's not going to work. So we're going to see how that happened, and I'm going to say that was his final oversight. But it all started with this cut. So I'm going to start by saying what white could have done with the cut. And this is also a point in the interview after the game. Iyama was talking about this. He said he had a hopeless game at this point. And all his opponent had to do was maybe play something like this. And he's right. This is all white had to do. But it turns out that when I looked at it with Katago, if I'm correct, I didn't really go into too many variations. So correct me if your version finds a better variation or something. But this makes sense to me. So this is what I'm going to go with. Just threatening to cut, allowing black to connect here is a lot better. So the value of this move is that it's loosely connecting up all of white's stones. Probably going to add some territory to here. It adds extra security to the corner territory also. So it's a positive value move as far as territory is concerned for white, and it's making the cut here even more effective. So black is going to answer that, and then white can play here. So the point is, if white's going to play at 3, that means white's not going to try to cut off these 2 stones. Yeah, I didn't need to mark all of them. If white's not, it means that white's not going to even be trying to cut off these 2 stones anyway. It's okay for everything to connect up, and it's still not alive yet. Black's going to have to do a lot more work to make 2 eyes, and white's stone at 1 here, this move, it's taking away some of black's eye space. It's at an important point. So if white's going to play at 3, having this exchange of 1 for 2, that's a good exchange. It's confining black to a smaller area, making black's space smaller, and it's sort of exaggerating, focusing on the value of white 3, making it more valuable. So it was interesting that Iyama was just simplifying it for the reporter, I think. He didn't bother to talk about moves like this, but he had the right idea, basically. And this is something that, in retrospect, I'm sure that any player's going to see this. In actual play, sometimes you get a bit heated up, and you just cut. White's going to capture that group on the right. It's interesting because I'm pretty sure his original game plan did not call for capturing these black stones on the right side of the board. White didn't have to do that. But then he saw the opportunity, jumped at it a bit hastily. So this is the Tesuji here. White, just to show that black did not have any way to capture that white stone. If black plays an Atari, this would be what we call the vulgar move. It doesn't really accomplish very much. This one is the Tesuji. So black's going to be trying to get some extra forcing moves in this vicinity, while white saves this one stone, the cutting stone. So that's how it turned out. White has to save the cutting stone once white's cut. So it confines white to playing these defensive moves, while black gets to cut white off, and has this forcing move here, and now plays here. And suddenly, it's sort of complicated. And yeah, it's exciting now. And so black stones here are sort of loosely connected. It's not a perfect connection, but they're sort of connected here. And white's group on the left is surrounded. White has captured the 3 black stones on the right. So, if white can save everything very efficiently, then white's going to be okay. So all white has to do is save this group on the left. White's still going to win. It's not as safe a win. I think that's what Oden Master was saying when he said that White's misjudgment was that White took the tail. So that would be going back to this point, this variation I was showing. This would be allowing the tail to connect up would be so much better. White would just do something like this. Surround the center, surround the lower side, allow black to struggle inside. And White's going to win. White has enough territory to win. So this is that cutting there at this point was White's mistake. And it made the game exciting. And then this move. This was probably the losing move. It's after this when the game gets really spectacular and exciting, and it's gonna be exciting. It's gonna be a big race to capture. A dragon is gonna die. But yeah, I think if White had played here, this would have been a slightly better way to try to connect on the side. So White is threatening to cut off these two space jumps here. Black has to find a way to connect. And so yeah, this is a forcing move for Black. Maybe Black's going to play here. If Black does something like this, which is relatively easy, and White gets a forcing move here, this is just connected. So this would be a very safe connection for White. There's no way that Black can cut it off. So this would be a winning sequence for White. Black has to take away that forcing move at 5. If Black instead plays this move, something like this, now there's the issue of this move, which is maybe going to cut that Black group off. So Black has to be careful of the potential cut there. And so it's kind of troublesome. And so yeah, so if Black plays here, there's this variation that I was working out with Katago, of course. It looks like White's actually going to win the race to capture. So it's probably still not completely clear, but just the way the connection of Black's group, it's not easy because White has moves like this or this to aim at these 2 points. So for instance, if and there's still the Aji here, there's all this Aji here, and sometimes White's just going to straight out win the semi. So I'll leave it here. If I continued, I'd probably confuse myself too. So it's not just you guys who'd be confused by the semi here. Black's shape, it's just the difficulty of connecting everything is going to make it very difficult for Black to win this race to capture. So this was probably a winning variation for White. Okay, back to the game. I jumped ahead a little bit. But this move, it looks so much more easy. And usually this is a connection. Usually this is a connection. But White gave up at this point. So at this point was when Shin Minjun realized that he'd made a terrible mistake. Because usually White can connect with the jump here. This looks so much like it's just connected, but it's not. So Black has a forcing move here and pushes through and plays the clamp here. It looks like White maybe can connect up to these stones here, but then Black pushes through. So Black can push through here and White can't cover because Black would cut and yeah. Black could just do it with the simple connection, I guess. This is not working for White. Otherwise, maybe Black's going to play here and fill a liberty by playing here. Or maybe Black's just going to fill the liberty and have some extra Aji towards the side. Yeah. So in any case, this is just not good. White has trouble on this side, too, in this variation. White's going to have trouble on this side. Let's see if I can show you a typical Tesuji here, where Black can cut and throw in and play an Atari and then escape. So you can see how the throw-in here has filled an extra liberty for White. And then Black has forcing moves like this. And it's bad for White on all sides, but for instance, like this. So there's this Aji in the corner where by filling this extra liberty with the throw-in on the first line, black made it impossible for white to capture the black stones in a different fashion. So that's the standard Tezuji. It was so bad for white that there were actually other ways that black could make that work. But basically, jumping here was what Shin So thought it was a clean connection, but it wasn't because of the attachment here. And this strange maneuver where black bumps against a 10, this whole sequence here, it's just not normal, but it works very effectively. And if white connects and black takes away, you might have noticed that this pushing through here, in some cases it might have been forcing, but it wasn't forcing anymore in this game position. So white didn't have a chance to play that. If black takes away that whole group in the center, and this is actually going to be a win for black. So this is just not working for white. And so at this point, I think any attempt for Shin Minjun to get a close game after playing this exchange would it would involve sacrificing these two stones. So it would be very, very painful, a way of playing that would sort of contradict all of the good stuff that Shin Minjun was doing up to this point. It would lead to a relatively close game. So what I'm talking about, for instance, is white playing here, and then if black plays this move, white playing something like this to make a connection there, and just giving up these two cutting stones. And it would be relatively close as far as the territory is concerned. And so you might say that the game would continue. A weaker player would potentially make mistakes and give the game back to white. But at this level of play, that's so unlikely that Shin Minjun just discarded this option. He didn't want to do it this way. It would be so painful for him to just sort of annul all of those good moves he played up to this point by giving back the cutting stones. It would be sort of humiliating, and it probably would not lead to give him any chances to win anyway. So he plays a much more exciting variation, which leads to a collapse. I think the story is that he got into trouble with his Korean fans because he resigned early. But yeah, the other option was this, which would have been really ugly. It would have been ugly and painful for him. So I sort of agree that it's okay that he didn't do that. It would have been so bad. I can sympathize with Shin Minjun for not going that way. So he plays here. He's going to start something on the left now. And there's a huge amount of bad aji here. A huge amount of bad aji. But Iyama is not going to back off at all. So it looks like maybe even white can get something in the corner. It's just not working. And part of it is because these white stones, they're pretty much cut off already. So these 5 stones are dead. At this point, it doesn't even matter if white can save these stones. White's already done the damage by starting things on the left side. And he's going to make a spectacular attempt to live on the left side of the board. So white pushes through here. Obviously, black's not going to give up that stone. It's a forced sequence. White pushes through here. This is the threat. So if black plays here, in this variation, white can force with this move, something like this, for instance, and the black group is isolated. So now it's a bit more dangerous for black. So it's this black group that could get into trouble. So black didn't do that. It's actually a pretty straightforward sequence, although it looks so dangerous because there's all these groups that look like they're dead. It's sort of confusing and dangerous looking, but it's actually pretty straightforward. White pushes through again. A move that looks safe would be going straight down, extending black's liberties. In this case, even if white plays here, just as it stands, black has 3 liberties, white has only 2, so it's not working for white. That would be the safe move. Iyama's getting just playing the best move instead of what looks like the safest move. This looks a bit scary when white plays here and is threatening a throw-in at g1, which would reduce black's liberties, so it looks dangerous. And it's also threatening if black plays away with some... Oh, sorry. Let's see, where are we? If black plays away with something like this, white's threatening to kill the corner with this move. So it's a double threat, which makes it look really threatening. Black can handle it. So if black had played on this side, this would turn out a dangerous variation for black because white gets to throw in. And this would kill the black group. So black fills a liberty, stopping white from doing that. So in this case, even if white extends the left side, this is not working because white has no way to fill a liberty after that because of the missing connection there. So there's no way for white to fill a liberty now. Black's going to win by one move. So sort of magically, black now has 3 liberties and white has only 2. And so now white plays this Tetsuji in the corner. You know, sometimes if this was a Tetsuji problem or a life and death problem, this move would work, but it doesn't work in this case. So if white continues with this, black plays here, this would be a one-step ko, but actually black's going to play here. And this leaves 2 inside liberties that white cannot fill. So even if white plays here, it's a seki as it stands. So that would be a seki, what we call a temporary seki, because eventually this white group on the outside is going to die. So it's not functioning as a seki. It's just a kind of a temporary seki-like shape there. And this also is a seki, even if we just look at the corner. Actually, all the outside liberties got filled up in this sequence where white tried to live. This is, it's just a dead shape. So, yeah. So basically, if white plays underneath to cut the black stone off, black's going to play here, and white doesn't have enough room to live. It's a dead shape. So if white gets this point, black has to remember to play this one. Black could have played it early, but anyway. That's a 3 stones inside shape, and it's a dead shape. So the corners gets filled up. It doesn't do white any good, because it's a seki shape. It's an unusual shape of the stones, but it's a seki because white can't fill the liberty there. So they're not, both white and black cannot fill any of those points in the corner. And white connected. He's just setting up the resignation at this point. Like if you're at this point is so bad, it's a huge difference. The whole white group is dead. So even if it's a team tournament, I think it's okay to resign now. So he's just going to play a few more moves, just show he's demonstrating the Tetsuji. It's basically providing entertainment for the viewers. And black connects here. This wins. If black had played the obvious mistake here, then the game would have continued. If black had played here, white would be able to... black has no connection, so white would get the ko here. So it's not likely for a player like Iyama to make this mistake. But they were just showing the moves here. I think it was kind of a service to the people watching, just to show the whole variation to the end. Sure, it was painful for Shin Minjun, but a great display of a wild variation there, which actually it probably wasn't as dangerous for black as it looked. It was pretty straightforward calculation. But it made the game really, like, visually just this huge race to capture here. Made it a very exciting game. And I'm about to wrap up here. So yeah, just let me finally push my calendar once more. There is a link here for the eBay vendor. So I'll put it in again. I'll put it in the chat. So a link for the vendor who is selling my calendars. And for me, let's give you my Patreon link, just so that people who want to support me, support my channel, that is, you can join Patreon, and you can make a small donation and get like $10, I think, is early access to some of my videos, and $50 is the teaching game on OGS. So if you want to play me on OGS once a month, you can do that tier of Patreon. So just take a look at my Patreon page if you have any interest, just to see what it's all about. So thank you all for watching, staying here to the end. I generally like to do these live, so during the game it's a lot more exciting, and I will in the future. I hope to finish this tournament. There's a maximum of 5 more rounds. So this was round number 5. Let's see if I can find the result. Let's show you the result here. Yeah. So black won by resignation. White resigned at this move. And so Iyama moved on to round 10. Shin Minjun was eliminated. Korea still has Shin Jinso. So Korea has Shin Jinso. Japan has 2 players. China has 2 players. A maximum of 5 more rounds in this tournament. And again, if one country wins the tournament with some players still waiting to play, then it will be less than 14 rounds. But if everyone plays to the end, which is what usually happens in this tournament, it's interesting. It usually happens, they go on to 14 rounds. There's going to be 14 people eliminated and then 1 player remaining. So that makes sense when they started with 15 players. Kawabunga's Fit25 is asking, any tips on identifying Tetsuji in a game? Look at my Tetsuji videos. I have a whole bunch of Tetsuji videos on YouTube. Although Kawabunga is from Twitch, my videos on that are on YouTube. So I put out pretty much a daily video for Tetsuji. You should just watch them, and then you'll start seeing them in your own games, because you do get the Tetsuji shapes. It's just that you don't see them. So thanks everyone for staying to the end, and I'm wrapping up. So see you next time. Goodbye.